Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. It's a little preview of Das Tape's new jam, Friends. They've got the new album coming out really soon. I think they've got a date. I got to look and see what the date is, but yeah, I'm excited for these guys. I'm excited for this album. So this video is on YouTube. Link is in the description below. So go check out their new jam. Super excited to listen to the rest of the album. But anyway, let's get started with the show, shall we? Let's bring in our friends, Mr. Rather Be Squidding, Jane Kyle, Mr. Jazz Shaw. Guys, how we doing?
Doing great.
Doing great.
Wow.
It's Skinwalker review night, so it's always a good night.
Yeah, it's always. I mean, you know what? I'm just pretty surprised at how sort of popular the. I mean, because we used to do this all the time. This, we've done the first 2 seasons, and it's just cool to see how these reviews have grown in the last 2 years, or in the last 2 seasons. So exciting that this is finally caught on. Our Skinwalker Ranch reviews. It's cool. Can you guys still hear this music, or is it gone?
I can hear it.
It's down real low.
It's down real low. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a nice little fade out.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, let me fade it out all the way. All right, cool. Let's get started with this week's show. So we open on the ranch, and the driller, the fracker, is still there. And they are digging out more shards, it appears. They sift through those, and thankfully this time they had the sifter under the tank that was dumping the spoils. This time they put the sifter under there, which was cool, before they pulled the lever. And they seem to have found more shards, and these shards are getting pretty interesting as far as their makeup, their composite makeup, but we'll get into that. I guess let's start with you, Jazz. What were your initial thoughts on where the show started this week?
Oh, I was thinking about this before we went on air, and last week you were the one who said that any show like this, as it goes over the course of a long season, it hits a point where sometimes you have to have a pause. And I think last week was the pause. Yeah, where they had to bring in a lot of stuff that didn't make the cut early, sort of get people caught up, wrap it up. And I enjoyed last week's show, but we saw when we did the scores, it wasn't my favorite one. It wasn't all that exciting. I had a much better time with this show. I'll just say that overall before we get into the details. Yeah. I thought there was a lot of exciting stuff in here. There were a couple points where I'm going to take a few exceptions. Maybe some clunkers, very minor on the scientific side, but big developments. And I really enjoyed the heck out of this episode. I thought it was a very good one.
Awesome. Jane, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one too, especially, I know I'm jumping to the very end, but that at the end with Travis walking on the rocks, and what was that? Yeah, I thought it was, I think, my entertainment score is going to be pretty high. And yeah, I don't know what beyond, I don't know. We're going to get into I have thoughts about almost every scientific conclusion they came to. So I don't know where my science score is gonna land. It might be based on this conversation.
Yeah, usually that's the way it ends.
Which is what's great about this.
I always wait for Jazz and
what is Jazz gonna say?
What is Jazz and what Rather gonna say? Yeah, that's always fun. But yeah, speaking of the devil, Rather, what were your sort of initial thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, my initial thoughts is this is kind of the jump the shark episode, at least as it comes to science and scientific conclusions. I thought there was a lot of lot of stuff a lot of conclusions that just weren't warranted. And I thought that when you get into that metal flaking stuff, some stuff was just kind of very deceptive in how they kind of laid it out. So I was very disappointed on the science, although, I still love the show, still fun to watch, but
wow,
yeah,
this is
think
going to be
we'll
fun.
get into it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a fun conversation. Okay, so let's get into the first, I guess, experiment. They brought in this robotics expert who had these robots that were supposed to able to first traverse the hole that they just drilled the day before, and they said that the hole collapsed, but it just seemed to me like the robot couldn't handle it. Am I crazy? Am I the only one who kind of got that vibe? Like the robot just didn't seem like it was the right tool for that job.
No,
Yeah, why didn't
that's
they put
correct.
that snake camera in there, right?
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
a camera on the camera. I think it looked like it was just getting stuck.
Yeah, it seemed like it was getting stuck to me. Jazz, what did you think?
Oh, I disagree. There were two different holes, obviously. The first one where they were going down, and then the hole that the professional fracker drilled.
Mhm.
And this is one of the areas where because I'm that kind of person, I've had to do work in the past with a lot of drillers because I cover the energy and oil industry and things like that. I have gone on oil rigs out in the ocean. I have been to ground drilling rigs up in Alberta, Canada, and things like that. So I'm not a professional driller, but I've worked with a lot of them, and I've had to interview them and kind of watch the process. And that was one of the areas where the science fell down a little bit for me because particularly that the drilling hole, when you send a fracking drill, and fracking is horizontal drilling, into a mesa like that, if you're actually drilling for something you're going to suck out, it's a really complicated process, and there's a lot more equipment than that guy brought in. That guy, by the way, I looked him up. He total pro, but he was just doing a science drill. He was doing a single hole. He sent the shaft in, kept adding pieces, sent it in, and then pulled it back out. If you're actually going to pump something, you actually send in a whole bunch of pieces and you build a pipe that goes through it,
Mhm.
and you drill further and you put another piece of pipe. He's just drilling a hole and he pulled it out. If you drill a hole in the ground, and like when they were looking, I know we're jumping ahead a little bit.
Mhm.
Wow, there's a big round rock that's suddenly blocking our way. If you send a drill shaft horizontally into a hill, there's going to be rocks up there that have been sitting there for thousands, millions, tens of millions of years because they were supported by dirt and rubble and crap below it. When you go drill all that away and then you pull the thing out, suddenly there's a hole.
Right.
Shit falls down into it. It's just gravity. That was not mysterious whatsoever. There's nothing mysterious about that.
Right.
The downhill hole where they tried to send the snake in, pretty much same thing. Not as much as a horizontal shaft, but when you go and fish your way in there and move stuff around, then yeah, there's pressure from the sides too, and things do drop in. I didn't find anything mysterious about either of the holes being kind of blocked. Maybe, possibly, like you were saying, maybe that robot wasn't the absolute best robot to do that, although it looked pretty high tech.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that one, but yeah, there's 24 hours later after you go into a hole from either direction, the fact that some stuff is shifted and now suddenly you can't get through anymore with something with just some treads instead of a drill bit. I didn't find that surprising.
Well, it was the one thing that, and I guess we should probably touch on this too. Before they sent the drill expert away, he had said that the bit kept running into a hard surface, and Thomas was saying, so basically what you're saying is you're kind of running into a V, and then the bit was able to go back up. He said, no, it's more of a dome. And that was kind of like the trigger word of the episode, was this dome underground.
I love that.
And yeah, I thought that was definitely entertaining, but it seems a little, I don't know.
I mean, it's making a conclusion from one data point, right? Which
Right.
is not necessarily adding up. And the question I had was, they start talking about, these rumors of underground bases and an underground spaceship. Where are those rumors from? In my interpretation, they started those rumors, and they don't really have any history beyond the Skinwalker Ranch show. the NIDS or the Skinwalker book by Knapp. I don't remember any of that in any of those historical accounts. So that was a little weird to me as well.
Yeah, I feel like this is a hypothesis that's kind of been through. I think you're right. Like it's sort of been there since season 1, when they were taking the ground penetrating radar pictures of especially in front of Homestead 1 and 2, and then they also drilled. And then when they saw these images, they saw those humps. And then when they connected the humps again, they were sort of trying to intimate that this could be part of a huge craft or a base or, and I think that's kind of where the entertainment aspect of the show is definitely coming in, because I think you're right, rather. I mean, for me, it was like, I would like to have heard the drilling experts say, yeah, I've never really run into this out here, or this is something unique and this is why it's unique, or this is why I think it's a dome. It would have just been it would have been nice to hear him elaborately talk about that a little bit more. But we move on. We got to the gentleman who brought in the camera systems. Go ahead, Jane.
You move on though. It's like, the was it 400 foot too, right? Or like it's really big. They even estimated how big and I know there's some deduction in that, but yeah, the presumption was funny. But like, to your point of it being entertaining, it's like those ghost hunting shows where they capture the EVP, and they really do capture something that maybe something the ghost said perhaps, but then they put then they say what they think the ghost said, and now that's all you can hear for the rest of the episode, right? Your mind actually plays tricks on you. So it's kind of like that. But I didn't so much mind that, because it's like the new portals, I guess, under buried spaceship, right? So
well, it also definitely,
theme of it.
If kind of the things we're hearing here in the last few weeks are true, it does kind of separate sort of the new Skinwalker Ranch versus old Skinwalker Ranch, as far as what people are thinking might be there. When we're talking about NIDS and OSAP, the reports that were submitted, some of them were submitted by some very questionable people, and whereas with this, I mean, we've seen, not from day one, but for at least the last 3 summers, we've seen sort of an inside peek at the ranch that nobody's ever had access to. So it's a lot different. But I feel like they're also trying to put a different kind of theory behind what they might be dealing with. It sounds more extraterrestrial or gravitational, as opposed to portals and sort of ghosts and spirits and things. I don't know.
I'm going to be the outlier here.
Yeah, no, please. What do you think, Jess?
I'm not interested in whether there's a spaceship. Well, I'm very interested. If that's something that it turns out to be.
Yeah.
I was coming at it again. I went and talked. I went back to make sure I had my ducks in a row, and I was talking to one of the drillers I've interviewed before today, and saying I think the show didn't do any favors when the driller actually said, I feel like I'm hitting a V. I went down to a certain point and then it's coming back up, right? But then it was the people on the show who insinuated, well, maybe not a V, how about a curve? And he's like, well, yeah, could be a curve, right? Something. But yeah, when you're doing fracking, when you're doing horizontal drilling, there are things you can run into that are too dense, too hard for the drill to bite into enough to keep going in the same direction. But that's rare. You're talking about hitting a vein of actual granite or something. Those drills are capable of cutting into. They're going to slow down a lot. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
If you're going through dirt, if you're going through shale, things like that, you're going to be cutting through a couple of feet every few minutes, and it's going to be shooting stuff out the back.
Yeah.
If you suddenly run into a spot where, wow, there's a big vein of granite, it can probably still dig in, but you're going to be there for days getting a very short amount of distance.
Right.
If it gets deflected, that's something really, really, really hard, because you don't turn back a fracking drill with very much. There's not a lot that's going to just turn it. because
what
he
do
has
you?
the
So
ability
do
to
you think?
control that.
Do you think that bit's hitting metal then, or do you think
I
it's
think
hitting
that's
just a
one
a
possibility.
huge rock? Because like when I look at that
If it's a huge
mesa,
dense rock, if it's a
yeah,
huge dense rock, certainly possible, and it might even have a V shape, because it's just a jagged thing that fell down millennia ago,
right.
and they're running into that, and it's kind of going down and then coming up the other side. Certainly still a possibility. But this guy's been doing this a long time,
Right.
and that mesa is mostly rubble. That gets into, by the way, we talked about the thing with Bigelow. You were talking about this. I had a question written down, and maybe this is a good point to bring this up. This isn't the first time anybody suggested there was an underground space, a spaceship, a empty area, tunnels, whatever. That was brought up when Bigelow was there. Bigelow did a lot of investigations, and 2 weeks ago we had the same person that we were all talking about last week who said, yeah, this is the spot where I was here back 10 years ago, and there was an opening to a cave. Now, unless he's lying, then I'm willing to admit in a ragged piece of terrain like that, sure, there could be caves, there could be openings, totally natural, in nature, right? Things like that could be there. And now it's all covered over. Could that happen naturally if there was a collapse? Sure. Could, as they are speculating, could somebody have dynamited that and closed it off? Also certainly possible. And that was when I wrote down the question, why has Robert Bigelow not released his findings? Why isn't he the bad guy in this story? Why does Brandon still talk about him like, well, he was so generous, in our interactions, and he sold the ranch to us and turned it over. He never turned over his data. We've had to fight tooth and claw to try to get any of it. Tim McMillan got one look at one of the big reports that he couldn't even get a copy of. Bigelow's hid everything. Why? Why isn't Robert Bigelow the bad guy? Robert Bigelow knows the answer to the question. By the way, Rob, was there a tunnel there, a cave of some sort of anything, and did you dynamite and close it? Anybody go ask him? Maybe, but he doesn't answer. Again, that's my one theme. I'm not going to bring it up again, but for everybody to take away with you, as we examine Skinwalker Ranch, why is anybody treating Robert Bigelow like the hero? Why isn't he the villain in this story? If you're in favor of transparency, I argue Bob Bigelow is the villain.
Man, that's
just my take.
No, I am 1,000,000% with you. 1,000,000%, especially considering he got tax dollars to do those studies and to pay for that land. We as taxpayers deserve more transparency on that ranch, especially from the Bigelow era. But my fear is that, and just based off of what we've heard from Erica Lukes and some of the things that we're hearing out of Chris Bartell now and Carl Vibe, who's now has been spending a lot of time, especially with the new team there, is that the old team from Skinwalker, the Bigelow team, was not very responsible in how they submitted a lot of these reports. And I'm just at this point, I'm like, I don't even know if I care anymore. I'm not sure if I even want to know what's in the NIDS reports or what Bigelow found. I don't know if it would do more damage, if it would split the community even more in half, because of the people who wrote these reports. Some people like them. Some people think they're not very good, very nice people. There's a lot of just complicated history when it comes to NIDS and Bob Bigelow in that ranch, and sort of the lives that have been affected by some of the stuff that's come out of that ranch in those early days. But I'm with you, man. I feel like Bob Bigelow should be getting all the heat from this community as far as, hey, what the hell were you doing there? Can you tell us about these holes in the mountain? And we also got a little bit of a discrepancy between Rather and Jazz, because Jazz says that the idea of a craft or underground bases, that idea has been there for a while, even back in the Bigelow days. And I think you're right on that, but I don't know if that's something that was mainly pushed as far as a narrative coming out of Skinwalker Ranch.
No, I just found a few references where it popped up. They didn't say, oh, we found a spaceship. They were speculating.
There's
something buried under the ground.
Right.
Well, and there's
or
also
just a big void. Sorry,
Mm.
right. There's also and I know I've brought it up many times before, but I think it's worth repeating, is that buried headline in the New York Times 2017 story about Bigelow having a contract to store I don't remember the exact term, like metal, maybe alloys, like strange alloys
Metamaterials.
or metamaterials in his Vegas buildings.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what I presume maybe those materials came from Skinwalker Ranch. Maybe they look like the metal shards that they're investigating now, knowing that Taylor has had maybe some more access than we realized, and he's backing up things like portals and dome shaped crafts being buried. Maybe there is more to it that even Travis knows. And I don't know if Bigelow's a villain. I mean, it did seem like he was trying to come out about this, even when he couldn't come out about his clearance, which was eventually disclosed because he was on 60 Minutes. But he knows something, and now would be a great time to share. We're all listening, so.
Yeah.
He published things that we can't get through FOIA because they were never the property of the United States government. They were the property of Bigelow Aerospace that were loaned to the government. Tim McMillan did extensive reporting on nothing to do with UFOs, tons of programs where companies, usually Lockheed's at the bottom of it, but there's a bunch of other ones where they do secret stuff and they're like, oh, okay, well, we're doing this and this is our material, but because you gave us a contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars, we're going to let you use our material, but it's not subject to FOIA because it's not the government's material. So go back and read what Tim wrote about that for anybody who really wants to take a deep dive. Yeah, I still hold Bigelow accountable. He's got a lot of stuff he could release, doesn't belong to the government, and he's not doing it. I don't know what his reasons are, but I'm unhappy about it.
It is kind of weird how everybody who's well, I won't say everybody, but it definitely seems like Brandon, when he speaks of Bob Bigelow, he speaks of him in a very high sort of respectful regard.
Yep.
And I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure they have a much different relationship than most people. I mean, he bought the land off him, but he never comes back to visit. I don't think he's an advisor to Brandon Fugel in any sort of way. I could be wrong. But I don't know. It just seems like it's almost kind of like Richard Doty. It's like, why are people friends with you? Like, why are people clamoring to get a picture with you or talk to you? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm good with talking to Rich, Dick Doty. Like, I don't understand the fascination with these people who have, especially in Richard Doty's case, got somebody killed.
Yes.
Like, got somebody killed.
That's not an exaggerated statement for anybody who's not familiar with what Lou's talking about. He literally put someone in a position. He didn't physically kill them, but he drove them to commit suicide. He killed somebody, and now suddenly he's a hero again, and was proven to be lying on behalf of the government and spreading disinformation.
Yeah,
Really?
well, it's
Now
not
you're
so
our
much
hero?
that they hold him as a hero, but they definitely put him up there as somebody to listen
subject matter
to,
expert.
like somebody to listen to when he speaks. And I'm always so confused on that.
Is
But rather,
there-
what were
is
you going to
that-
say?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with you on Doty. I wonder if Bigelow, is he still funding any research into the paranormal and this stuff? Because I could see that as one reason why people might still be kind of buddying up to him.
He's funding life after death research. He just gave out a huge prize for that. And he's got a bunch of programs going on to find out if consciousness can survive bodily death. That's what he's moved on to. Okay, you moved on, dude. Give us the UFO stuff from the ranch. You're done with that, right? Can we just have that? That's all I'm saying. I'm going to shut up.
I agree.
Jay, what were you saying?
Well, I'm definitely not going to defend Richard Doty. I don't know why he would even expect that from anybody in the community. And so I don't get heroicizing him at all, but isn't it kind of like, but I mean, as a researcher myself, I'm interested in what everybody has to say. We always talk about amnesty and wanting to know the truth. And we know that there were Men in Black type agents. And it's like, well, who else are they? What are the other names then? So he's like kind of one of the only names we have. So I see it interesting in that way, but also isn't it kind of like listening to the mafia guy, the reformed mafia guy, talk about
Right.
crimes? Or I get the fascination with it. I mean, there's
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would you guys want to see Richard Doty testify before Congress?
whoa.
No.
I'm kind of on the fence on whether or not I'd want that. Because if you get a senator that's pretty savvy or knows the bullet points of his whole history, might be able to get him arrested. You know, he might be able to actually put some kind of punishment. I don't know. Maybe it's a statute of limitations thing, but I just don't understand. Like he was at a UFO festival this last weekend in England, and he's like a rock star. I was like, why? Like,
Well, remember, like Tanya Harding, right? Like she had a comeback, right? Wasn't she like making money on TV and like celebrity boxing matches? Like it doesn't take very long for people to.
I guess that's true.
Well, I think what's really happening
more than
is
30 years. I'm sorry. Rather,
I know it's not this.
Go ahead.
What's-
I don't think there's a statute of limitations for anything other than murder that lives that long.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get him on murder for driving somebody to suicide.
Yeah, I don't think you get him on murder, but you could definitely get him for like going outside of sort of the protocol of his job.
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
Expired too. But
Yeah,
I'm not a lawyer.
Like,
Go ahead, brother. Sorry.
I think he's popular because he's telling people what they want to hear, right? You know, he's telling these outlandish stories, and people really want to believe them. So I think that's just as simple as that. People want to believe, and he's telling them what they want to believe from somewhat of a position of authority. I don't really think that he has any authority on the subject, but you know, a little sliver will be enough for some people.
Yeah, I'm starting to really see that. Like, if you're telling people what they want to hear, whoo, boy, you're popular. You're really popular in this this arena. But if God forbid you say one thing that goes against that belief system, or question it, or what'd you say, Jane? Flares?
Flares. Yeah. Just
we'll be talking about that tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Drones.
But yeah,
it's all drones.
It's all drones. Yeah, you know, like I think there's two sides of this, right? There's a side that is, you know, placating to the community and telling them what they want to hear, and then there's a side of this that I think trolls the hell out of the community. It's not really interested in truth at all. They just want to cause trouble. And then I think there's a different part of that element that is actually trying to just get more clarity on things, and that gets confused with trolling or trying to just be a negative Nancy or whatever. And I think we got to just start listening to people a little more carefully when they start talking about these things. We're really going to get into this tomorrow because, I mean, you know, especially when it comes to Jeremy Corbell and these pyramids and what the Navy and the Pentagon is reporting compared to what he's reporting. It's very confusing. And it doesn't make any sense that Jeremy Corbell somehow has more information and more sources on this than any other reporter on the planet. And he's also the only reporter on the planet that seems to have the sources behind this story. I don't know. We'll get into it tomorrow, but yeah, I think this is it's just I'm wondering if this new investigation at Skinwalker Ranch is trying to distance itself a little bit from the old guard. To me, I think they are a little bit, but we'll, you know, only time will tell. And God darn it, man, we have 470 people here. Hello. Jeez, if you're new, like, share, subscribe. Yeah, the last two shows have been absolutely insane with our audience. So thank you guys so much for being here. But anyway, let us continue. What was next here in the episode that caught your guys' attention? I'll go to you rather, and then we'll go down around, finish with
I think the metal flakes are really the next big thing, unless there's anything before that we want to cover. And man, I was, you know, when they came in and they told us that, they were, you know, made, the tellurium and europium is what they were composed of, and that there was tellurium on one side and europium on the other side, and it was kind of a layered thing. And Travis brings up the whole, there's a paper about, you know, warp drives being using this type of layering. I was like, wow, this is they've cracked it. This is almost unbelievable. I was so excited. then the next scene, it turns out that was all fake, or at least it was, very much convoluted and not. They said there was trace amounts of these two rare elements.
Yeah,
it wasn't a layered. One side was terrarium, one side was europium. It was trace elements, which. It turns out there's trace elements of these two elements in the Uinta Basin. It's not that surprising at all. So that was really where I thought it was a jump the shark moment, where I was really let down by their analysis of that.
Because it was like they show the analysis, the elemental breakdown to Travis. He points out those two elements, and then they take those elements and the test to the University of Utah, and then the professor at Utah starts naming all the things that are in this metal, and Travis is like, well, what about the two that I found? And he's like, yeah, there were traces of it in there, those were definitely not the main metals in the sample. So I think you're right, rather. I mean, I think when if it's 0.01% of this element, it doesn't mean it's why are we automatically going to warp drive? Like, it just seems like
even them saying that there was, one side versus the other, as far as I can tell, there's nothing to back that up.
Yeah. Because they said one side was lined with it with what are the two elements? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Tellurium and
europium.
Yeah. So europium lined one side of the sheet, and then beryllium lined the other side of the sheet. And then, when the guy at the University of Utah, he didn't say any of those things. And it didn't seem like he was very excited about the sample. He wasn't as excited as Travis. Let's put it that way.
I took it a little bit different than Rather.
Yeah. What do you got?
When I went and dug into that, those two elements will show up in trace amounts if you have the right most in-depth testing capabilities. Okay. But they are really rare. Okay, those are two of the rarest elements, and I was researching them today. Not so much the tellurium, but europium, and I just jotted this down. It's the most reactive of the, and Rather can explain what this means, the lanthanide metals. It is so reactive with everything else that, much like sodium, if you collect some of it, you have to store it in an inert liquid, because it reacts with oxygen, it reacts with water. If you take a piece of sodium and you throw it in a lake, it explodes. If you have a piece of pure sodium and you set it out in the air, correct me if I'm wrong, Rather, it won't explode, but it's going to start burning, and it just burns away. You have to keep it in a very neutral liquid environment to stop it from reacting to things. And europium's in that class. You don't find a lot of it in nature. It's in trace amounts. But I was more interested in the fact that everybody, including the scientists they talked to, seemed to agree that they had a very thin sheet of something. A very thin sheet of something that was composed almost entirely of metal, various metals. Metals that exist in nature, certainly, but very thin sheets of it. You find very thin sheets of rock sometimes, where it's been laid down by water. Metal, when you go and hunt for iron so you can mine it, there's no thin sheets of iron in the ground. It's just ore. It's clumps, Why would really thin sheets of anything like that come out of the hole? And I'm interested. I'm sure Rather probably has an explanation immediately. There's places in the earth where there are just thin sheets of metal everywhere.
What's your theory, Jane?
Go ahead, Jane.
Well, I don't.
It seems like manufactured. Yeah.
Well, see, if there's trace amounts in the basin, I'm interested in that Rather, where you found that one, because my science score will start going down lower if that's true. But I was looking into it, and indeed, Travis was right that europium and tellurium or whatever it is rare, or is at least rare compared to what it is in the universe. I don't know if it's like on the top 10 list of rare elements, but I believe that you can combine them or use either or they've been trying to use it, and I have it written down here, as a photoelectrocatalyst catalyst. So
Catalyst.
it can oxidate water, right, with like extract hydrogen and oxygen. And so there are some artificial uses. And then, like Travis mentioned, solar cells and solar energy. So maybe there is something that was converting energy, or at some point, or I mean, look, we've already talked about how mining, maybe there was mining done or whatever. I think tellurium was found initially in a gold mine, like somewhere, not in Utah, but yeah, it doesn't look like we're looking at something otherworldly or extraterrestrial, in my opinion. But I do think it's interesting. Like I think adding those in, and we can tell they edited it not like chronologically, right? Because in the last episode we heard rare and unusual elements, and they only mentioned the iron and the aluminum, which is like, it looks like aluminum.
Well, the one thing
we finally got the other two elements that they were referring to. So
well, the one thing I definitely noticed is at least the professor at the University of Utah wasn't like, oh yeah, this is sheet metal. We find this all the time from old mines. Like, I feel like if it was something like that, something super easy to explain, I think he would have just said that. Maybe they edited it out. Who knows? But I mean, I feel like, I don't know. Would they have put that in the show? You think?
No, I agree with Jane. I don't think anything screams, Mike, that's got to be extraterrestrial. Oh my God, nothing like that could ever possibly happen. But again, not to repeat myself, finding thin sheets of very specific groups of metals just showing up in sheets.
Yeah.
I've not heard anything in history, and rather can correct me. I don't think there's an aluminum foil mine somewhere in Europe where people discovered aluminum foil originally, and they're like, holy shit, this would be great to wrap sandwiches in. Let's get a bunch of this. I don't think that's ever been discovered. So I think it may not be extraterrestrial, but to me, it certainly did suggest some intervention by somebody to make something that thin and that metallic.
Yeah. Well, sorry, real quick. I just want to throw this in there before you guys get your thoughts. But B Rye 3D says metal flakes look like they came from the inside of the tank that they emptied out, by the way. And I'm a qualified fitter / welder. So this guy's saying that
a lot of
those flakes could have just been sitting in that tank from before.
Metallic crap, as Dragon says.
But rather, what were you going to say?
Well, yeah, I've read that from other people on the internet too, who do the same type of work and say that stuff like that is fairly common in those tanks. I think Thomas Winterton posted on Twitter saying that they did pressure spray that out and they had it really clean before they did all this stuff. So that kind of goes against that theory. But I mean, I would love them to go in and look inside that tank and do some analysis of what the inside of that tank is to kind of definitively prove one way or another. Also, I thought was interesting in this episode, they did show Dragon kind of shifting through that hole without it being sucked up into that tank. Yeah. If they were to find those metal flakes there in that hole without being in the tank, that would have been pretty conclusive too. They didn't show us any flakes coming out of that hole, so that makes me think I don't really know.
Maybe they didn't find it. Yeah, it's hard to tell. Yeah, I mean, because the next day they were digging through the stuff and they were trying to sift through it. But yeah, no one pulled up, multiple metal pieces out of the dirt that they were digging up, so, or let alone one. So yeah, I see what you're saying.
And if these flakes did come from the mountain, I guess I'm kind of, I don't have a lot of experience to draw on here, but my kind of a reading of it would be that, maybe there's a big metal ore layer underneath the ground, and there's kind of like a rust layer or something like that. And so what we're seeing is kind of like paint chipping off of there, kind of like when lead paint will flake off, and maybe we're seeing, some rusting and flaking layers that are, when they're scraping the underside of that are coming off. Seems plausible to me. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think that it's a question too of whether it was manufactured. I'd like to see a geologist look at that and be able to say, is this
that's what we're missing,
like
right?
Metal ore, or is this an actual manufactured piece of metal?
We got to get these guys back on the show and talk about that. I'm not writing off what Rather's saying at all, and he's certainly when it comes to science, Rather's 10 times smarter than I'm ever going to be, maybe 100.
I don't know about that.
But again, when you drill for metal, you don't find a block of metal. That doesn't exist. I can tell you that for sure with all the drillers I've talked to. When you go mining for gold, you don't go down and find bars of gold in the ground. You find a bunch of quartz and you find some other minerals interspersed, and there's little flecks of gold buried in there. That's what you're looking for. All right. There's nothing different with the rest of these. There isn't a big curved block of these rare metals or any metal sitting under that butte unless it was manufactured. And I'm not saying there is one that was manufactured. They hit something hard. We don't know what it was. But yeah, if you're pulling out that many flakes, if they aren't from the tank, which I guess is possible, then it does look like something manufactured. Doesn't necessarily mean aliens. Maybe Bigelow buried something there that he was screwing with. Maybe they're hitting that. Anybody think of that possibility?
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, the one thing I will say is that the drilling expert, when he looked at the shards, he wasn't like, oh, yeah, these are just scraps from the tank. You know, like I think if those were just scraps from the tank, I feel like he would have seen those before at other projects. Is that fair to say?
How often do you think they look through the spoils, as they call the show, for a drill like that?
Well, that's a fair point. But then again, I'll say I don't know. Depends on what they're drilling for, right? If they're drilling for oil, I would assume there's an indication to say, okay, we've hit oil. Or if I don't know. Do they do a lot of fracking type of drilling like that when they're searching for rare elements like gold or silver?
No, fracking is still almost entirely for fossil fuels,
right?
And no, nobody's going through the slag. You know where you're going because they do test drills and they do subsurface radar, and they're like, okay, we've identified this area that looks like there's a lot of oil, a lot of natural gas, things like that. And to get there, we're going to start here, and then we're going to turn. We're going to go through. We know what kind of rock we're going to encounter. We're setting the right drill bit. We're putting down the stuff that comes out. It just gets flushed, you know, and there's environmental rules for how you handle that waste, but it's mostly, it's not toxic. It's just crap that was in the ground that came out of the ground. You put it back in the ground later. Nobody's sorting through it. So I agree with Rather. That doesn't normally get looked at. Who knows what you might find, but I still think that thin flaky metal, it's enough
weird
to at least provide me with a lot of interest.
I can get into focus.
What do you got here, Jane?
I want to clarify that the metal flakes are, again, as metallic crap, like Dragon was saying. The idea is that it's left over from the machining, drilling, mining that's done, that it's not what's being mined for. So like that's metal swore for chips. I mean, you know better than me, Jazz. I just wanted to just elaborate a little bit. I don't know. Can iron show up in that? Can aluminum show up in that? Can
they both
I don't know.
show up.
So that, I think that's the idea. It's not that it was being mined for that. My feeling is that there could have been at some time, or could still be, mining for uranium, because there's also like a lot of radioactive waste that can cause some of the symptoms and things that people experience at the ranch. So that's just a big
I couldn't find a record because I looked after like 3 shows ago. I couldn't find a specific government record for a permit for a uranium mine on that exact property, but there has been significant uranium mining in that region. There are deposits of uranium. You're absolutely right, and people have mined it there.
And
it's really valuable.
That's like a really awesome. That's such a Skinwalker insider like data point, right? Like to add this FOIA request about uranium mining like on site. Yep. That's cool. That's good to know.
Was there anything?
I didn't even have to FOIA. There's a site you can go to with the U.S. Geological Group, and they'll just show you everybody's mining permits. That you don't have to FOIA that. It's all public records. Every mine that's ever been drilled in the United States, there's a record out there publicly. You can go, just click, go do a Google search, you'll find it.
Was there anything that you found FOIA-able in this episode, Jazz?
Not yet. We're gonna have to rewind some stuff. I'm hoping we get to talk to Travis. I'm kind of really disappointed with Travis at this point, but there were some additions to things that we've already been FOIAing that I was talking to Brandon Fugel about earlier this week, where we have been shut down by the government on a number of questions. And 2 of those questions are ones that now we found out the entire time I've been banging my head against the wall and trying to get these answers. Travis was working with the government, and he probably knows the answers, and nobody's told us, and they're saying they don't have any answers for us. So I think we'll have updates in later shows when we get the response to the appeals that I filed, and Brandon's been helping me with that. So we'll see, but no, there's no really new updates on that. I would love to get the chance to talk to Travis about that.
Well, I'm going to be reaching out to Brandon and to Dragon and to Thomas Winterton. And then once we are done with our episode 10 review, we're going to do a review of the website, because we have to talk about their new website. And then we're also going to do like a final sort of overview, sit down, hopefully do a nice long, like 2-hour roundtable discussion with the guys from the ranch and us. And then we can sort of pick their brains on the stuff that we saw this season, and maybe if it's especially the stuff that we didn't get any resolution to, the stuff that we're really curious about, like the video analysis of the orb, or any of the other things that we saw. You know, the bug that I think is a bug.
And I would. It's not a bug.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to see if they were able to break down those things more through video editing and things like that. So, stay tuned. We'll be doing that in the coming weeks after the show's done airing. But yeah. So what else? What else did we? Did you want to rather? What do you want to? What do you want to talk about?
So you remember the giant round boulder that was blocking the hole in the thing?
Yes.
So there's a good video of this, and so use your own judgment. How big do you think this is? It looks like there might be an insect there, and if the boulder is as big as they describe, that insect is huge. Maybe we found the mantids that you just kind of see a little leg moving.
Mystery
there.
solved.
Yeah,
that's a dino beaver.
Well, blow up the hit the expand on the video rather. There you go.
Yeah, so you see a little grasshopper
you see the
leg
legs,
there.
Yeah.
And so so how big do you think that boulder really is?
Yeah, I don't think it's a boulder. I think that's something you could probably throw, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so I thought that was a lot of build-up.
Because I made a big deal out of this, I'm going to insist that doesn't change my evaluation. That was something that was above.
Right.
And after millions of years, the dirt that was holding it up got pulled out and it fell down. Yeah. So maybe it's smaller. Maybe they were making it seem bigger than it was. But I don't think that's paranormal or unusual. That's something that fell out of the ceiling when you pulled the drill bit out.
It could also
happens.
be.
It's just gravity.
Yeah, I think I think you make a good point, Jazz. And also, like, we don't know what's underneath that boulder. That could have just been packed with sand and other rocks, and that was the last thing that fell on top of it. But it is weird that, I mean, just the week before, that was a pretty cavernous sort of opening, and now they can't get anything down there because a bunch of stuff has fallen. And I'm gonna assume that's probably because of the fracking right underneath it. Right. I don't know. But when you hear about like fracking horror stories in like Michigan or Ohio, and these guys are fracking, they can feel the drills underground and they're turning on their water and they're lighting it off, just weird stuff like that. So I think Jazz is right. I think that those drills, that process shifts a lot of things on the surface, and then when you pull it out, especially like you said, Jazz, if you're not doing it with a pipe, because sometimes when you drill the hole, then you shove in a pipe so it doesn't collapse, and you drill the next part of the hole, you shove in another pipe, and it's a process.
One stage after another.
Whereas this was just straight dirt hole. And so, but when you pull that stuff out, it's going to collapse on some points of it, right?
But I hope we can all agree Rather is wrong. That was clearly a giant insect. It was a Mothra Godzilla kind of thing. We know that now, at least.
It was definitely proof of mantids.
It was
that's
gigantic.
for sure.
And there's also tons of people in the audience. Like,
pull up that video again. Pull up that video again, rather, please. That is the arm of a bodybuilder. Yeah.
That's Mothra.
Yeah. that's a easily, by the length of those arms, it stands at 12 feet tall, for sure.
Clearly.
And that's a log,
done.
not a twig.
We solved it.
We solved it.
Mystery solved. Moving on.
Funny. It's funny, dude. No, I didn't even notice that, so I'm glad that you found that.
Yeah, that was
because
good.
I think yeah, it does add some depth or scale rather to what we're looking at. Yeah.
But I still think that's absolutely could just be a rock that fell because of gravity after you drilled a hole below it.
Right.
It's just a smaller, like softball size rock or something.
Right.
You know. So it's just my take.
We had a question here from the audience from Skyhawk, who's a member and also gave a $10 donation. Thank you so much for both. It says, Jane Kyle, when should we expect you on Skinwalker Insider live chat?
That would be a blast.
That'd be a blast.
Hi.
And to be fair, they've been having some pretty cool discussions on their Skinwalker live, you know, and they're always great roundtables, like, because they're just like, it's them. They're setting up the stream and they're like, okay, you guys want to talk for a couple hours a day? Sure. Let's get Travis. And it's just like, damn, man, this is like, I would love to do this every week with these guys. This is awesome. So it's cool to see them do it. And, you know, I don't have a problem with the paywall. Again, you know, this is time for these guys. Time is money, and equipment costs money, and hosting things costs money. So
absolutely,
for $10 a month, you get not only sort of to hear these guys speak every week, but you get a 24-hour live cam to the property. And again, we're gonna
dive into that, by the way.
Yeah,
you know, I got 2.5 weeks vacation coming up starting next week, and part of it, believe it or not, I'm going to be spending on the Skinwalker site, and I already signed up for it, and I'm willing to pay for it. But I just, in my life right now, with all the crap I have going on, I just haven't had time to go in and dive into it. But man, I really want to.
Well, Christina Gomez loves it, and Duncan Frury is saying Skinwalker live chat has become a community. I believe it. I bet it's a hell of a lot of fun. Matthew Rye with a $2 donation. 634 people here. It's insane. I can't believe I think our show is hit. Something happened. I don't know.
Cool.
So something's happened. There's way more people in here than normal, so there's no guests today. So it's like, what's going on?
Hitchhikers.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Well, I'm gonna say I'm not gonna question it, even though I just kind of questioned it 4 or 5 times.
Robotic hitchhikers. Oh, that's a whole other level.
If there's any disappointment, we haven't had one person do the $50 shot challenge. You know, guys, it's on every week when I'm on here, and you're kind of disappointing us.
Yeah, so if you guys want to see Jazz Shaw take a shot of what are we drinking today, Jazz? Usually it's a Gentleman Jack.
I don't have any shots here, but I have a bottle of Jack Daniels not far away. I can do a shot of JD.
All right, yeah. Just so you guys know, he takes for $50 for a shot from Jazz Shaw. So okay, what else? What else did you guys want to talk about from this episode? Anything in particular before we get to
that was what I had.
We kind of jumped over the very beginning, the interview with Tom. Is it Tom Wolf?
Tom Lewis.
Oh yeah, Tom Lewis.
Yeah. That's
Tom Lewis. We skipped when he blacked out. Yeah, I had notes about that too.
I like that they did an interview and a follow-up. We've been asking for follow-ups every episode, and they did. They talked to him, and so we got more detail about what he experienced. I'm still curious about what the doctor's assessment is, and if he has some permanent issue to deal with. We didn't get there, but I also wanted to bring up. He talked about hearing the static during the experience. Have any of you passed out before? I've almost passed out a few times. Apparently I have something called POTS, P-O-T-S. You guys can look it up. So I kind of know what that feels like. But one of the times I had like static in my ears. Like that's what it sounded like. And it kind of everything he described was just, and that was just like I guess you could say there's a normal explanation for that. That said, hearing static is something that's also associated with UFO sightings and even abductions. And I was going through my website where I had at least 3 testimonies where people talked about hearing a static noise during, a UFO sighting. Like this person said, I was feeling very anxious and there was a high-pitched static sound I attributed to my television. And then they went outside and realized it was, or they turned off their TV and it was still going. Another person wrote, My neighbor left. He seemed very confused of what he saw. They're witnessing a UFO. I couldn't move. I heard something in my ears, like a deep voice, but like static. It was saying something, but I couldn't make it out. So I just thought that was a weird overlap where I mean, I don't know what's what, but there's actually more. I found more references of people hearing static during UFO sightings, though, than I did on Google of people like hearing static before passing out. I just know I've like
I thought the blackout thing was, I agree with
Yeah.
you, Jane. I thought that was really interesting and kind of weird. I've never blacked out, like passed out. Okay, except when I was a teenager, maybe after a party. But I've been knocked out cold when I got hit with like 5,000 volts, off a magnetron, which is very different. But that experience he had was attributed to radiation, and he was with other people, and we've seen that before. And I wrote this down in my notes. It's like here's this weird sound, but he was being played a sound from far away over a walkie-talkie when he heard that sound, and then he blacked out and went out. That's not how radiation works. Radiation is localized, and it's not pinpoint. It's in an area. And so he's totally fine. And then somebody plays a sound on a walkie-talkie that gets played by somebody else holding a walkie-talkie next to him, and he passes out. I don't have an explanation for that. I'm not criticizing it. I'm not saying it's fake. I'm just saying I don't know of any mechanism that makes that happen. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. But the one thing that did come to mind was kind of the whole Havana syndrome stuff, right? I think people kind of hear stuff with that, and that could be kind of a directed thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the timing if that's the case, the timing would be coincidental with that thing being played over the radio, presumably. And to your point, Jane, about passing out, I've never passed out and haven't heard buzzing, but I have had sleep paralysis. And that's a very common thing with sleep paralysis is you have kind of a buzzing sensation and a buzzing sound. So that's just another interesting data point to throw out there.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the human body acts like, like something running out of batteries when you're like about to pass out or you get paralysis of some kind. But Havana syndrome, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I shared a video yesterday from 60 Minutes, and they interviewed a few diplomats that were in Canada, and also, or there were Canadian diplomats saying in Havana during this whole thing. And it wasn't just the diplomats that were getting these things, nosebleeds, passing out, nauseousness, grinding metal noise, are things that they heard before they started experiencing these.
See, that's scary.
That's just weird. Scary. But it kind of is. I mean, what if Skinwalker Ranch is just sort of a testing range for this weapon?
Possibly, but like kind of to what I was saying earlier, like just again, like I did find other people a few references where it talks about like fainting or passing out as like your hearing is you're having an interference with your hearing, and so it can come off like static. So it could just be nothing at all. It could just be maybe he was having not nothing at all. Obviously, it was something, but maybe he was having.
I'll be right back.
Right, or so there could be nothing mysterious that you have to invoke, except that we just have this pattern of just leave his picture there for as long as needed.
So funny. If you guys don't know what's going on in the podcast world, we just got a $50 donation from John Francois Chalabois, longtime fan of the show. Thank you so much for the donation. And now Jazz is going to find his bottle of liquor so he can fill up a shot and take a shot for you guys. It's just so funny when he sees it. He's like, all right, I'll be right back. It's like we're twisting his arm. It's so funny. Sorry, Jane.
It's okay.
Right?
It's okay. Everybody should take a shot every time.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Contrary to popular belief, I don't actually keep booze in my office.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, this is your office now.
I have it. So, okay, here we go. Thank you for the contribution. It's an actual bottle of Jack Daniels, Jack and Black. So
it's a pre-vacation shot for the.
Well, yeah, I have a vacation coming up next week. So Thank you, sir.
Salud. Thank you, Jazz. Thank you, Jean-Francois Chalois. Always a pleasure when you guys help us out here on the show. How was that, Jazz? How you feeling?
Good.
Good.
Oh, I don't mind it. It's just I don't drink it straight normally.
Usually
I do like
put that in a
highballs.
martini. Yeah, highballs, martini. Yeah, he's a classic drinker.
Martinis are gin, but
Yeah. Excellent.
I
All
don't
right. Well,
do shots a lot.
Let's unless you're on this show, of course.
See if Jazz is feeling.
No, I think one night we had like $300 in shots or something.
Yeah.
I didn't get up till noon the next day.
I was scared after the 5th or 6th one. I was like, okay, we gotta have a limit
for the team.
Yeah, he is taking it for the team. All right. So any other thoughts on the show before we give our final scores here?
I'm just wondering if Jazz's science score goes up or down after a shot.
After the shot? Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to run that experiment
I thought you were gonna
next
say
week.
Before and after rather, but
rather is almost like a shot of liquor to the system.
Well, he is on science. Yeah, I never discount Rather's scientific opinions. And by the way,
appreciate that, Jazz.
Can we get a quick plug in? Rather has his own YouTube channel, and he doesn't post like every day or anything. He's got a lot of posts where he goes into some amazing shit. I try to promote it on social media every time I see one. And if you haven't been following that, go watch it. Guy is smart, and he talks about a lot of really cool
smart
stuff.
as hell.
I appreciate you, Jazz. And if anyone thinks that I'm a big skeptic, go check out my channel because I dive into some interesting topips.
When people call
it's
you
not
skeptic,
even just UFO stuff.
Yeah.
He talks about really amazing stuff.
Yeah. Well,
I've learned a lot.
I always get a chuckle when people call Rather a skeptic. I always get a kick out of that because clearly you're not listening. You're just not.
I disagree. I think Rather is a skeptic, but I think Rather's a skeptic because every scientist should be a skeptic.
Correct.
Every
skeptic
scientist
shouldn't be a bad word.
Should look at a question and go, okay, here's something we don't understand. Let's go test this. I'm not going to buy it just because you told me. Let's go do a test. I think that's the kind of skeptic that Rather Squidding is.
Yeah, no, and when I say skeptic, I don't mean I mean when people throw that term at him. Yeah, they throw it at him as if he's a debunker, and he's not doing that at all.
Not.
And look, we're just looking. We, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, and I think some of you guys probably are in the same line here. I need something that I could pass on to the people who don't. Are the 500 people that are not watching this show. We need something. I want to see the 5 observables displayed. I want to see something jump out of the water, go into the sky and disappear into space. I want to see satellite images. I want to see 2 angles of one object. That's what I'm looking for. So that way I can then say, okay, Mick, what are you going to do with this? Okay, Rather, what do you think about this? And so those are the things that we're looking for, and we're just not gonna. I don't know. We're not gonna just go with everything that's said by everyone and just kumbaya with all of the information. It's like, we need to demand better as a community. We need to hold the standard higher, and so that way, when we get pyramid videos, we could look at it and go, yeah, not good enough. We want more. As opposed to
everything. Don't reject anything until it's been tested. Have an open mind. Just go look for answers. I think that's this entire show's thesis.
I agree. All right, well, let's get into scores, shall we? We'll start with you, James, since you're at the top there. What's your science and entertainment score for episode 8 of Skinwalker Ranch?
Major Oak Island entertainment points. So I really liked this episode. So I think my entertainment score is going to be up there like 8.5, which I think is really, really high, or at least based on what I've scored in the past. And as far as science score goes, it did go down a little bit hearing Jazz and Rather just confirm, I think, some of my
Rather said that the show jumped the shark. Jesus.
So my science was sinking in the ocean with the shark. So I think I'll bring it. But also, though, I think what they're doing is scientific and we're making progress, though. I feel like my theory about human intervention essentially at this site is, I think, picking up steam, and if that's because of the drilling they're doing and stuff. So I'm battling with that a little bit. And so I would say, you know what? I'll say 4.5.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. J. Allen Heineken was almost right there with you. He said 3 for science, 8 for entertainment.
Oh, there
So
we go.
close to what Jane's thinking.
Line.
Rather be squidding. What do you think? What are your scores?
I am conflicted on this. You know, it was very entertaining. You know, when they were talking about the tellurium, europium layered material that was possibly part of a warp drive. You know, I was on the edge of my seat. So it was very entertaining. You know, I'll give it a 7 for entertainment. But I do feel I jumped the shark. You know, I've never before felt that the show has been intentionally misleading me. And I feel like they intentionally misled us twice, at least in this episode. One with the boulder, and the other one with the tellurium and europium not being layered and not being on each side, just being trace amounts. And they didn't really do any science necessarily in this show. You know, they had the one scientist, metallurgist, but that was a very high level, and it kind of negated what they said just a scene prior. So I'm going to go with a 1 on science. I was very disappointed in how they gave the scientific layout of all these facts.
Wow. I think that's the lowest score you've given the science.
Yeah, hopefully they can recover. Hopefully the next couple episodes are going to give us some more
into the ranch. So
yeah, there goes his invitation. Jazz, what do you think?
I'm going to be honest. I had a score written down, and as so often happens when I talk to smart people like you guys, both the scores have changed a little bit over the course of this conversation, but I don't agree with all the conclusions. I still thought that I gave last week's episode some fairly low scores, not horrible scores, like it was a piece of crap, but it was okay. I found this show to be a lot more entertaining, particularly when they got into discussions of the drilling, which at least is really entertaining to me, and a number of the scientific points that ties into the second part of it. But I thought it was more entertaining than last week. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a 7.5 for entertainment. I was going to give it a much higher science score until we talked to Rather. And I still disagree with Rather on a number of things. I think they opened up interesting scientific questions. They talked to smart people. The stuff with the drilling was very good. I do think they went overboard on a few things. It came down a little bit when we saw the image of Mothra, in the tunnel, and the thing with the tellurium and europium, I still think that's totally valid. They're really rare. When you find it, you have to pay attention to something like that. But the drilling part where it was hitting something that it couldn't go through, I think there was a lot of science behind that. So yeah, I'm going to bump it up, and I'm going to go with, I'm totally opposite, or rather, I'm going to go with the 7 for science this week.
Wow. Okay. Okay. From an entertainment standpoint, I think this is probably one of the best episodes as far as responses from the dragon. Like, he was just everywhere on this ranch this week. I mean, he was. I love when he's like, "This ain't gonna work. This isn't gonna work." Then him getting frustrated with it was just a lot of good one-liners from Dragon.
Why is it in our mesa?
Yeah. It's just so funny. So I'm gonna get. I mean, I was thoroughly entertained, and I think this was, compared to the last 2 episodes, I think this episode was definitely more entertaining than the last 2 episodes. I feel like we're going back to the uptake where it's uptaking toward the season finale. So I feel like the episodes are definitely getting more entertaining. So I'll go 8 as far as entertainment. Science, I'm gonna give it a. I mean, I think the fact that they went to the University of Utah and they gave them, the samples and sort of what they found, and then the professor came out and said, "Here's what it is." I liked that. I wish there would have been a part where, somebody from the ranch would have been like, "Okay, so it turns out after even more inspection, this is actually what it's made out of. We found traces. It wasn't layered with this and this on this side." If they had just made some corrections on that, I think that would have gone a long way. Because again, I think when you're doing experiments like this, you have the right to be wrong. You have the right to correct yourself, especially if your initial analysis is corrected by an even better analysis. And that's kind of what happened. They didn't really address it, but that's what happened on the show in a way, right?
I don't agree with that.
Riley?
I think that they sent it to the metallurgist guy, the person in Utah. The report came back. They did that initial analysis, that was completely incorrect on their own, saying there was 2 elements on there. I don't think they ever got any indication that there was anything more than trace elements. So
no, but
yeah,
but
I don't think that they reanalyzed it.
No, but didn't the university reanalyze it?
No, I think that they sent it to the university and got that analyst back. And that's where that original discussion came from, was their analysis, and then they
the rare and unusual.
Well, because when I think of it, like I'm thinking like the initial analysis that that Eric Bard did on it, and then they sent it off to get it looked at even further to the University of Utah.
I don't think that Eric Bard's analysis came back with the tellurium and europium. I would bet on that.
Because I thought
Travis got right.
Isn't that what Travis said? He said that one side is layered with the urapium, the other side is layered with the whatever. And
I think they were working on the results from the University of Utah, though. I think that they had the results then. Okay. I mean, someone correct me if I'm wrong about that, but that's
no. I think I might be wrong.
I think there were trace.
But I'm trying to remember the order of it. Right, like what happened first. Because they get the metals, they look at them, they're talking about the elements of the metals with Travis over the phone. And then they send off those results to the university. Then they meet with the professor at the University of Utah. And then the professor comes out and says, okay, here's what's in it. And these are the traces of the things we found, and he didn't even bring up those elements until Travis was like, well, what about, this and that? And he's like, yeah, we found traces of it, but it, he didn't say anything about layering or that it was manufactured or any of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that they sent it off to the Utah. They got the report back, saw those 2 elements, and then, had that whole discussion.
Right.
Just, making wild assumptions based on the report that came back. And then they actually went and talked to him, interviewed him. Right. And they were, probably trying to get him to say, tellurium and europium, aren't those big? And it turned out that no, they weren't. They were just trace elements.
Right. I'm gonna give my science score a 3. I'm gonna go 3 and 8. And I think that's I mean, look, man, you guys want a 10 out of science from me? Put up a damn balloon with instruments on it over the triangle area and tether it down and leave it up there all season. And see what comes back from that. I think I want to see, I've said this a million times, at least one experiment repeated every episode. And then at the end of the season, we get the whole 10 episode sort of scientific display of what they found and at least get one theory, one hypothesis. We're going to put this balloon with these instruments because we want to try catch this, and this. And we want to try and prove either this, or this, or disprove this, or this. And we've got 10 full weeks of this thing collecting data. And we're going to go over it. We're going to analyze it. And then we're going to display it for you guys on the last episode. And then we'll talk about it on our Skinwalker, web portal. And we'll break it down even further for you guys. I think like that's going to get 10s out of me. And I want to give this score 10, like this show 10s on science, because the claim is that this is a science show. It's kind of the only thing I kind of disagree with Brandon on, and even TJ Allard. Like they call this a scientifically sort of a documentary almost of science and the scientific method and the scientific process, and I don't feel that from this show. And I think the best way to sort of prove that would be like take this show to any university professor at any place of higher learning, have them sit down and watch all 3 seasons in this and say, okay, what is the scientific method that you see in this? What is the process? What are they doing right versus what they're doing wrong? Would you consider this science? Based off what you see, right? I'm just saying, based off what we see from the TV show, that does not discount all the other stuff that we don't get to see And all of that other stuff could be way more valid than what's being showed on this show. And so that's why I'm putting up my hands and going, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt here. I just kind of want to see it on the show because that's the access I have, is this TV show. That's how I get access. I don't have, I don't live on the ranch. I'm not close by where I can just hop there and talk to these guys anytime I want, or actually have boots on the ground. And, my access is the TV show. So these are the things I'd like to see in the show to sort of, I don't know, make it even better. It's already entertaining. They got the entertainment aspect of this down. I think if they can even crank up the science by a third, it would do wonders for the conversation in the show. I guess we must have lost Jazz.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to hop back on.
Yeah, maybe that shot knocked him out. I hope he didn't I really wanted to get the story about him getting hit with how many volts did he say?
A lot. I wonder
lot.
what superpowers he got from that.
Yeah, Jesus, was he able to climb up on walls after that surge of power? Maybe we'll ask him next week. I'll hit him up after the show, see what happened. But yeah, that's my score. What did you guys think of the preview for episode 9?
Well,
we got rockets.
We're not rocket.
Bigger and better.
Yeah, bigger and better rockets, and it seems like we got some lasers that are triangulated into a point in the sky. Maybe that'd be interesting to see if those lasers get bent, or like the one laser experiment they did a few weeks back. I'd like to see. If that happens again with 3 lasers, that would be very interesting.
Travis is starting to look a little bit like a one-trick pony with these rockets, though.
I'm kind of sick and tired of the rockets. I'm not going to lie either. I don't understand the point of the rockets, but I don't have as many degrees as Dr. Travis Taylor. Maybe there's a very good reason why we keep sending rockets up there. I just don't know why we don't put a balloon up there. I feel like a rocket is going to hit that point, stay there for about 2 or 3 seconds, and then come back down. So you're getting 2 or 3 seconds of data while it's in there suspended neutrally. And then once it starts coming down, the chute pops, and then you're just tracking data. It's not even necessarily in that point because you don't know where it's going to drift off to. It's just not controlled. It's not a very controlled data gathering aspect. It's a rocket, for God's sake. Like, it's a rocket. Why are we not putting a balloon up there? Maybe
the rocket's going to deliver the balloon, right?
I'm pretty sure that's not how balloons work. I'm just taking a stab in the dark here, but any other thoughts from you guys? What do you think?
What would you say there were trace elements of science in this?
Trace elements. Great way to put it.
There were definitely trace elements of science in this episode. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. I just want more. Just yeah. I just want the science on the show to be better. And God, like you're talking about a really cool show. I think you got something really cool on your hand if you can improve the science aspect of this more.
Well, and if there is a big science reveal, like I said, it would make sense for them to save it till episode 10. So
sure,
I'm knock on wood. Hopefully they deliver.
And again, if we get that science revelation at the end of the show, we could go back and correct all the other scores that we gave on the previous 9 episodes. I just don't know. I don't think the formula of the show is going to lead to a point where we get a whole bunch of science revelations at the end of the season. It just doesn't seem that way. But again, I'll wait and see. We'll see what happens. We'll talk to our friends from the ranch and see if there's any suggestions maybe we can get in there for next season. Because God, unless they're filming right now, they're probably filming right now, or at least maybe starting to film because it's summer. And I noticed that when these guys are filming, they're usually in t-shirts and stuff that's light during the day, and then at night they're starting to bundle up. So I'm assuming that the shooting schedule is somewhere like July and August, maybe into September when fall hits or somewhere around there. So if we're going to get our suggestions in, I guess we should get them in as soon as we can. But yeah, any other thoughts, Jay? What are you working on?
Oh man, well, all I gotta say is saucers in Texas before Roswell? ? Maybe I'm working on a video for that to come out on YouTube soon. So please come and subscribe to my channel.
Rather.
Yeah, but hopefully I'll put the video tonight on my channel, Rather Be Squidding, about how you could use your own potential phone to detect UFOs and contribute to data that might find dark matter and UFOs.
Rather, you got to start tagging us when you release these videos so we can share them for you.
We'll do.
Please tag me every time. So check out Rather's channel tonight, you guys. I've got his link in the description below, and I've got Jane's link in the description below, and I got Jazz's link in the description below. So check out the description. If there's links to everything and everyone, and you can support everyone that you see here. So we appreciate you guys being here. Man, we had a huge audience today. Want to say thank you to the super chatters, Event Tide, Matthew Riot, Skyhawk. Let's see here, Byrai 3D, and of course Jean-Francois Chalabal with the $50 donation. Truly appreciate it, you guys. We are a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you, but you do not need to support with $1, especially if you can't. Times are tough. No worries. The show is 100% free. There are no paywalls here. So if you can't support us financially, don't sweat it. It's not a big deal. You can enjoy the show just as much as anybody else. I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. Want to say thank you to the moderators. Want to say thank you to Jane and to Jazz and to Rather. And yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. We've got a really cool show. We're going to be talking about this UFO sighting in San Diego that set the internet ablaze this last weekend. We're also going to break down this article by Christopher Sharp in the Daily Mail about these drone swarms. Over 100 drones displaying otherworldly technology, according to Jeremy Corbell and according to a source from this, but it kind of contradicts everything else. So we're gonna get into it. We're gonna break it down. We'll talk about it. We'll try and get to the bottom of it, even though we definitely won't. And then we've also got the premiere of Weird Texas tomorrow. Jane, are you ready for that?
I am. Well, I think so. Let's see.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, you guys. Well, we appreciate y'all being here. Thank you all so much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. That is Jane Kyle. Rather Be Squidding. Until tomorrow, you guys, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We'll see you. Have a good night. Peace. I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.